I go, I'm putting on. Putting on, putting on. Everywhere I go, I'm putting on. Putting on, putting on. Everywhere I go, I'm putting on. Putting on. Where you from?
Welcome to Popcorn Sports on the Popcorn Entertainment Network. I'm your host, Mike Kyle, and welcome to yet another episode of Why You Should Root for every team in the NBA for the 2018-2019 season. I, of course, am not alone. I am joined here by Brian Freeman. You can follow him on Twitter at BrianFreeman24. He covers the Portland Trailblazers over at BlazersEdge.com. Brian, go ahead and introduce yourself, man. How you doing tonight?
Hey, I'm doing good. Hey, thanks for having me on here, man.
Absolutely. I'm really excited that we're able to knock this out. So my first question for you, and the question I ask all of my guests, is how did you begin to cover the Portland Trailblazers?
So kind of a long story, I guess. I was playing professionally overseas and tore my Achilles. So I started looking for other avenues. I wanted to wanted to stay in basketball. I had a little girl at the time, so family was extremely important to me. Had chances to go kind of the collegiate coach route or the NBA scout route. Had a couple buddies that had been in those industries before. Just talking with them, they weren't getting to spend any time with their families, and it was rough on that relationship. So that was something I wasn't willing to do. Mm-hmm. So I was kind of looking for other avenues that I could kind of stick with sports because it was of course a passion of mine.
Right.
So started calling around and seeing if there was some writing. I've always kind of been had a thing for writing, so I was kind of looking around to see if there were any opportunities, and came across Blazers Edge and David Deckard, and the rest is history.
That's really cool. And I mean, we were kind of talking off air about, your professional career and how my uncle also played overseas. And it's crazy that you just mentioned that you blew out your Achilles, because that's what happened to my uncle. And that's something that we didn't even get into. So that's just even crazier into the overseas ties that we now have. So you said that you grew up in Oregon, correct?
Yeah, born and raised.
Okay, so were you a Blazers fan growing up?
Yeah, I mean, as far back as I remember, I was probably 3 or 4 years old, and I was sitting there watching Blazer games.
So it's like that's kind of really cool, and from just kind of, seeing how it all comes together, where you grew up as a Blazers fan, you had your career, and now you come back full circle, and now you're covering the organization. Is that kind of like surreal for you a little bit?
Yeah, that's cool. I mean, it's you just stick with close enough with something that you really love, basketball, and especially Blazer basketball is things I really love. So it's something, I put myself in a position that I want to be part of it,
Wild turkey.
You good? We good?
Yeah.
Okay, was that me? No.
I had the Blazers box score up in the background, and it started playing an ad.
No worries. All right, so let's dive into the general overview of the Portland Trailblazers. So they joined the NBA in 1970. They're called the Blazers due to a fan contest. However, Pioneers was actually the most popular choice, but because of Lewis and Clark College, they already held that name. They didn't want to use it. Something I found really interesting is the Blazers logo has 5 little swirls on it, and it's supposed to represent the 5-on-5 play of basketball, which I think is just such a really cool, unique detail. Anyways, their colors are black, red, and white. 34 playoff appearances, 1 championship, with their last being in 1977, and they play in the Northwest Division with Denver, Utah, Oklahoma City, and Minnesota. Now we can just kind of dive right into last season. Last season, they went 49-33, and they lost in the first round of the Western Conference playoffs to the New Orleans Pelicans, and what many believe to be just a buzzsaw of a team. So kind of break down last season for me. What did you see? What were some of the pros, and what were some of the cons?
Last year was, entering the season, it was, I wouldn't say a lot of people would have expected Portland to be the number 3 seed. They won, I think it was 14 in a row, kind of near the end of the season. That helped them out a lot. Other than that, they were kind of about a 500 team. But there was definitely a little bit of lightning in the bottle that they caught. I mean, Damian Lillard, he was an all-star beforehand, an all-star caliber player, and he took a tremendous leap that a lot of us didn't really see coming, and became a first-team All-NBA player. CJ McCollum made leaps. And their defense ended up being a big part of their success, and getting the 3 seed in the Western Conference was quite the achievement for that group of players. Of course, as you said, the Pelicans used the term buzzsaw, and they were the lower seed. The Pelicans were the 6th seed, and lost in the next round. Of course, it was Golden State, but
right.
That was Portland went in there with a lot of hype, and when they they came out of that series, there was a lot of doubt and a lot of disappointment for a team that had overachieved up to that point.
What do you think it was in that series that really did them in?
The Pelicans put 3 guys on Lillard and McCollum and just said, all right, the other 3 people on the floor need to beat us.
Mm-hmm.
And they couldn't. Portland was playing 3-on-2 offensively the whole game and couldn't get buckets.
So I feel like that's something that the Blazers have had a lot of problems with in the past, and that's finding scoring from elsewhere. If it's not Damian, if it's not CJ, and I feel like they're trying to kind of construct a roster this year, which we're gonna dive into in a few moments, to really fix that. But I feel like just overall, like the past few seasons, that's been the main storyline. Because Dame is such a great talent, and CJ has emerged so well. But then you look around at their supporting cast, and this has been very critical of the Blazers over the course of the past few seasons, like I just said, where you really, like, there's no one.
Right, absolutely. I mean, Nurkic has evolved to that third option, and he had a great season last year. But when you're playing the Pelicans, when you got Mirotic and Davis, who's Nurkic going to guard?
Right.
So that was kind of the hole with him. So he wasn't able to stay on the court because defensively he was just getting torched. And so not only does Portland not have a super strong third player, but in that series their leading candidate for a third star or whatever, third leading scorer, couldn't even play. So they were looking at, the ball was in the hands of people who were, not meant to have the ball in the hands in playoff series as often as they did.
Right. So now, let's just go right into this year's roster. Damian Lillard, CJ McCollum, Evan Turner, Jusuf Nurkic, Nick Stauskas, who has come out hot to start the year, Zach Collins, Al-Farouq Aminu, Seth Curry. Kind of break down this roster for me.
So it was clear what they wanted to do. They wanted shooters. That New Orleans Pelicans series really exposed that people weren't able to hit shots, weren't able to make plays. So they brought in Stauskas, brought in Steph's little brother, Seth. Obviously another really good shooter. Nurkic has been shooting threes in preseason. Zach Collins has been improving. I mean, they definitely made this huge overhaul of they're going to bring in shooters and then teach their other players to be shooters, pretty much other than Evan Turner. So that's kind of what they're going for.
What improvements have you seen this season from this young team? Because I was just kind of as you just said, they brought in a lot of shooters, and I've seen just in the few times that I've watched Portland already this year, you can definitely start to see them really start to come around offensively, which is something that's relatively new now to this organization. So kind of break down maybe some other aspects in which you've seen improvement so far.
Okay, so it's only been 4 games, but excusing the game that just happened. But one of the big differences so far this year is the second unit. Evan Turner, was brought in here to kind of be a big part of that second unit, but he hasn't really, in previous years to this, been surrounded by shooters and surrounded by people that complement his game as a driver and a kicker and a creator. This year he has Stauskas and Seth Curry on the wings when that second unit comes in. And this second unit isn't just containing and holding the boat afloat, but they're pushing leads and gaining leads, and they've been an advantage for the Blazers this year.
I was about to say that too. As I was kind of preparing for the show and I was going over the roster, and this team is kind of unexpectedly deep. I think when I just listed off those list of players, I think I listed 8 or 9 guys, which is what you need in the NBA regular season due to how taxing and how grueling it is, especially with some injuries.
Yeah, a big key they lost was Ed Davis.
Right.
Who was most loved people in Portland. I mean, Portland and all the players just absolutely love this guy. But they were making a commitment to the 3-ball, so they lost a big without bringing in another big and just brought in a bunch of guards. Willing to go the 3-guard lineup and willing to lose out on some rebounds and some interior defense.
I think one of the key aspects of the Blazers roster this season is having Seth Curry. And I know that might sound like, oh yeah, okay, you're just bringing another shooter and he's the little brother of Steph. Of course you want him on your team. But I mean just from the aspect of actually having a solid point guard to back up Damian Lillard for probably the first time in quite a while, if my memory serves correctly.
Yeah, last year they had Shabazz, and Shabazz started off the season. Up until January, he was averaging 12, 4, and 4 on really good percentages. And Portland kind of thought, okay, we got our backup point guard. He really tailed off the end of the year. And I wrote an article about a week ago comparing the two and just kind of putting a focus on what the Blazers are trying to do. And a guy like Steph, when it comes to a shooting contest, you get Seth Curry and Shabazz Napier, you're going to be way better off with Seth. And once again, that just all points towards the goals that the Blazers were after.
Right. Now, one of the dynamics that I want to focus on is the dynamic, and maybe I don't want to call it a controversy, even though I feel like it's an NBA controversy just to be a talking point, is Damian Lillard versus CJ McCollum. Who's more important to the Blazers? Can they coexist? Does one have to be traded so they can acquire and free up cap space and use that cap space to acquire better talent around the organization? What are your thoughts about that?
I think both of them have handled the situation because there's clearly, no matter what side you look, clearly an overlap of talent in those two positions. The overlap of skills. They both do very similar things. Dame is hands down the more important player. He's the leader of that locker room. I mean, look at the box score today. The guy had 42, 6, and 7. Dame carries this team. It's definitely Dame's team. I put Dame at 1 and 1A and 1B before I put CJ, anywhere in that conversation. But they've done a good job coexisting. They respect each other. They play well off of each other as well as you can for people with overlapping skills. As far as moving forward, you kind of feel like with a backcourt like that, your ceiling's a little bit lower. You look at a team like the Warriors, they had Steph Curry and Monte Ellis for a while, and they just realized that wasn't going to work, so they just cut bait on Monte Ellis, and that's when they were able to bring in pieces that fit a little bit better. I don't think right now there has been an opportunity to flip CJ for somebody who makes more sense. Like a guy like Jimmy Butler would make more sense, but you have him for 1 year. Is that something you actually want to do? So there hasn't been a whole lot of times that somebody has become available that you think, oh, CJ for him in a swap makes sense.
Do you think it's weird that they overlap? And here's what I mean by this, right? Because you can look around the NBA and there are just some really good backcourts that gel together. And I'm not saying that Dame and CJ don't gel together, but as you just said, like, they overlap and like their weaknesses are pretty much identical for the most part, and so one of them is expendable. Do you kind of find it similar to maybe a John Wall and Bradley Beal situation?
John Wall and Bradley Beal are very different players. I mean, John Wall's he's a legit point guard with
true, and then Beal's a shooter, but you're right. You're right.
And a shooter, but one nice thing about Portland is, if you're going to have overlapping skills, the overlapping skills you should have are shooting. That's what you want.
Mm-hmm.
And, they both have that, and either one of them could just light it up on any day, and it's nice to have two guys that can really put up points. If both of their overlapping skills where they were great defensive players that can't score, that can't work because you can't win any games. If you can put up points, clearly they were able to make it to the 3 seed in the playoffs last year, so it's working at least a little bit.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's definitely a luxury to just have two torches that can get hot at any possible time during a game. Now, kind of give me one player that you really are excited to watch this season. Maybe a guy that's flying under the radar.
A guy I really enjoy is Zach Collins. He's young, he's underdeveloped, but man, he's an intense guy. He's a competitor. He makes, he's young. You still, even his second year, you still see him make a lot of mistakes. Rookie mistakes. He's a really, really good defensive player. There's been a couple games he's taken minutes away from Nurkic just because he has such an effect on the floor defensively. And offensively, he's just a guy who's not going to hurt you. He's not going to take bad shots. He's going to make sure he's moving. He's going to, he's capable open jumper shooter. But he's fun. I'm hoping that his offensive game can develop a little bit. But his defensive game is a lot of fun to watch.
All right. Now, we'll wrap up this segment with this. What do you think is the expectation for the Blazers this season? Give me their outlook for the year.
So, my personal outlook, I was pretty close last year. I had them at 48 wins. They got 49.
Mm-hmm.
This year I have them at 42, 43.
Okay.
Quite a big drop. And I would say they got better this offseason, but so did everybody else. And, basically losing Ed Davis and Shabazz and bringing in Sauce Castillo and Seth, you're probably not improving that much. But now with the injuries to guys on the Spurs, with the Timberwolves kind of being a mess. There's a couple more, not easy games, but easier games than I had originally predicted. I'm going to say I'll be happy if they make the playoffs.
So you think
7-8 seed, I'm good with that.
Okay, I was just about to ask. So you think that there is a probably a legitimate possibility that they miss the playoffs? That's in the realm of possibilities for this team.
Yes, it definitely is. Once again, when the Spurs were looking good and before Jimmy Butler kind of had his deal, I had the Blazers penciled out of the playoffs.
Okay.
But now that those two teams aren't necessarily locks or even close to it, Lakers got off to a slow start, but they still have LeBron, so I'm not counting them out.
Right.
With those two teams kind of in flux, I think Portland at this moment is looking like a playoff team.
And that's the thing with the West, where it's just a crapshoot from the 4th seed down to 8, and you'll have 10 teams fighting for those 4 or 5 spots, which is just ludicrous.
You could even say going from, Houston doesn't look that good right now.
Yeah, you're right.
You could two or three down to like 11.
Okay, that's very fair too. That's the thing though. I feel like that's the beauty of Western Conference basketball, and I feel like you'll start to see more attention to just how crazy it is because LeBron's in the West, and you've already seen the Lakers kind of struggle a little bit, even though they're turning it around. It's like, hey, you're not in the East anymore, and so that's the thing. This is going to be such a beautiful time for the Western Conference. I feel like because of that, and so people are going to be like, hey, if you're able to make the playoffs in the West, like that means something. And obviously, we've always kind of known that the West is better than the East, but I feel like this is just going to really shine that spotlight down on how true it actually is.
Oh, absolutely. And then even when you look at the bottom of the league, like Sacramento, okay, that should be an easy win. Mm-hmm. The Suns, obviously, they're really young, but there's a lot of talent on that team. They could be dangerous maybe near the end of the year if they're not trying to lose. But the whole rest of the West, you talk about teams like the Clippers and Dallas and Memphis, and those are good teams.
Right.
Denver's going to make the playoffs this year, and they didn't make it last year, so somebody else is going to be out that was in it last year. Mm-hmm. And you're looking at 2 should-be wins, and every other game is going to be a dogfight. That's a long season.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm just so excited for that. Just because I told you before the show, I'm on the East Coast, right? And I usually stay up for the West Coast games, but I'm half asleep for half of them, right? It's the worst thing about living on the East Coast. I hate it. Games start at 7 and they go till 1:30, and it's like, dude, I just want to sleep. I have class the next day. So I love the East. I love the West Coast for that ability for games to start at 5 and at 8:30, and you have the rest of your night to do whatever. I love it so much. But
I don't know how you guys. I don't know how anybody on the East Coast can watch basketball.
It's a struggle.
I watched move from Oregon, which is Pacific time, to 1 hour over to moving to Boise, and man, it's made everything so much more difficult.
Yeah, it's a
I
struggle.
got that early anyway, but now I'm staying up till 11 or 12 watching games and writing recaps, and I don't know how people on the East Coast can do it.
It's not fun. I feel like, but that's the thing. Like on the East Coast, we all bond over how much it sucks.
Yeah, man, that's tough.
All right, so let's kind of shift gears over to the fan base, the fun, the culture surrounding the Portland Trailblazers this season. It's a small market up there in Oregon, but they have one of the best fan bases, I think, hands down in the NBA. They pretty much sell out every game at home, and at home, they perform extremely well. Their record, I believe, over the last several years is definitely toward the upper echelon of the NBA in terms of home games. And I just feel like right now they're just trying to get over the hump into the elite of the West, because it's a team that for so long has just been good but not great. And I feel like everybody is just waiting, and it's been almost a pressure cooker almost, where they're just waiting for that team to try and make that hump into the elite of the Western Conference.
No, I think you hit it nail on the head right there. Portland people and Oregonians love their Blazers. I've been around a couple other states. I haven't seen anybody as passionate, other than maybe Laker fans, for their team. Portland's Blazers' only show in town. They just got a soccer team a couple years ago, but everybody here that's been growing up watching sports has been growing up watching the Blazers, because there's not a whole lot else to watch as far as sports. So the passion is there. Blazers are a big deal. It's absolutely a culture. Blazers Edge, we've built a community just around that website and being able to talk to fans. There's just so many people that have such a strong passion for the team. So man, if they can just make make one more step, get into one more higher tier of teams, man, people just explode. People would go crazy out here.
Right. And now you, like many of my guests, have this dynamic where you lived in the area, so you grew up around the culture, right, in the Blazers back then. And now you get to cover the team in a social form, whether it be on social media for Blazers Edge, whatever the case may be, where you're interacting with Blazers fans from either Oregon, Portland, or around the country or around the globe even. And so kind of break down that dynamic for me, because I just think that's so interesting and so fascinating, because you can have overreactions within the city itself, and then overall on social media it's all kind of cool, calm, and collective. Or what's more likely to happen is it's cool in the city, and then everyone on social media is just on fire, overreacting.
Yeah, and that's kind of one of the things is you are a fan. I'm writing, and trying to be as honest and trying to be as unbiased. But deep down, I am an absolute fan of this team. And
right.
I want that to be, in the things I write. Like, I don't want to be a stiff out there, And it seem like this, I don't care. But it's definitely something you got to balance. You can't overreact, and you also don't want to underreact. But that's what's kind of the fun about it. When you're doing something that you're so passionate about and you care so much about it, that's going to spill into your writing, and that's going to make it more enjoyable to read.
How is your playing career, you played overseas, how is your playing career influenced the way that you see the game when you're watching it on TV? Because I played, but I never played in college or overseas professionally like you did. So I'm sure your level of analysis and the way you detailed watching games, I feel like that's just on another level.
Yeah, I got a really good pre-writing experience. I did professional coaching, and I was did work as an agent for a little bit, and did a lot of training in camp. So I got a pretty broad perspective of some stuff, which I think really helps in some of my writing. I get told a lot that I see a lot of things from a player's point of view, and we get in debates where people are talking about better for the team, and I always will side with the players,
right?
Because I understand that point. That part makes more sense, and I get where the players are coming from when they're making these, whether it's contract disputes or playing through injuries or any of those kind of debates. I've been where these players are, so I definitely understand that. So I get told that I favor the players, and that's it's true. I do.
So I mean, what's your interaction with Blazers fans like on social media? Because that's where your biggest online presence is. That's where all your work gets published. And so, what's just some of your positive or negative interactions with Blazers fans so far?
I get some people that'll say, "Hey, as a player, what do you think about this?"
That's got to be really cool.
Yeah, I think it's just kind of a cool thing for people to be able to say is like, "Hey, I kind of got a player who, is somebody that can communicate and kind of get their perspective of as well." Which a lot of people don't really get that. A lot of people don't know, a lot of professional athletes, and I played against a lot of these NBA players. During my time too.
Can you name drop one? Just name drop like one or two for me.
Dame. I played Dame a couple times in college.
Okay.
But almost all those Southern, because I went to Long Beach State, so all those Southern California guys, we played pickup games and stuff at Long Beach State.
All right.
So it just gives Blazers Edge just another angle, I guess.
Yeah, that's just so cool. I really like that. And I haven't read a lot of your work, but now when I read more of it in depth, I'll be able to kind of get a better understanding of where you're coming from on everything.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, I appreciate that, man. I hope it helps.
All right, we're going to wrap it up with this. You have 30 seconds to pitch anybody why they should be a fan of the Portland Trailblazers this season. The floor is yours.
I'll give you two reasons. Number one, Damian Lillard. I would say I'm going to argue other than Steph Curry. Westbrook and Paul are kind of in that same tier, but this is one of the best point guards in the entire NBA. And people forget about how good he is until you actually watch him. If you just look at the stats or you don't really get the essence of what he does. That guy's such a leader. He has such a good, strong mentality about him, and his teammates absolutely, are influenced by his toughness. Also, the fans, man. The fans in Portland, that community is something that's just great to be part of.
Very, very well said. I love Dame myself. Ladies and gentlemen, that was Brian Freeman. You can follow him on Twitter at BrianFreeman24. He covers the Portland Blazers for BlazersEdge.com. Brian, thanks so much for taking the time, man. I really appreciate it.
Hey, man, thanks for having me on.
You got anything else to plug?
Just keep watching those Blazers, man.
Sounds good. All right, hey, if you enjoyed this, be sure to leave a like and subscribe down below. We're doing this for every team in the NBA, and odds are we probably already covered your favorite team. So be sure to check all of our previous posts for that. And if not, it'll be coming out this week. Don't worry, we got you. And with that, we'll see you next time.